back, everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kipp Adams with me this week for our second episode. And, let's get ready for spring practice when we break out the 2 episodes a week, which I would imagine will be the case once we get in with spring ball starting on Tuesday. Kipp, how is this Thursday treating you as the countdown is to what, 4 or 5 days until we're back watching the Bulldogs?
Yeah, we made it through our third winter. Was very overconfident in my dress the other day. Came out in shorts and proceeded to run back to the bedroom. It was back. I think I don't know. It felt like it was low to mid 60s in the house. It was cold compared to the 78 to 80 degrees we hit just a couple days before. So as Rusty tweeted, I think a couple days ago in his timeline for Atlanta, we hit that third winter, and now I can already tell the front porch is just covered in pollen. So spring is here, and that means, spring football. This is the kind of the off season for football, but there are a lot of sports going on right now. Getting ready for the NBA playoffs. You got NASCAR. Rusty's down there, just watching it. Watching golf and imagining what all those bunkers felt like the other day. There's a lot going on right now. March Madness right around the corner. This is a very underrated time of the year overall for sports. You got spring training in baseball. Hope springs eternal again for the Braves to get back to the World Series. I feel pretty good about most of the guys we've seen so far this spring. And so, yeah, I think this is an exciting time just to be a sports fan in general. And a lot of people are just waiting for the fall to come around, but enjoy it now. This is a great time to get some really, really high quality sports action going.
Absolutely, and we'll have a March Madness pool set up for the Dogs 247 folks. Try to get that set up and have it ready come Sunday. And yeah, you're talking about the Braves. I'm looking at those Matt Olson MVP odds. He's tearing it up down there. I'm hoping that he can carry that over.
This is it. This is the year. He is knocking the cover off the ball. He just needed that year to kind of get acclimated to a team that actually is competitive, and I think he's ready for a breakout season.
I was going to say, I was getting ready for the segue, but you took it right there. We are going to do, I think it'll be a really fun and hopefully fun to listen to episode of this podcast. We're going to do our breakout candidates for Georgia this spring. And essentially what this is going to be a draft back and forth between Kipp and myself. And we're going to talk about the players that each of us pick and probably just go about as long as 25, 30 minutes worth of a podcast can go. And to kind of clarify, who we're picking from, we took out pretty much anyone who started. So don't listen to this episode and say, man, they didn't pick Mykel Williams. They didn't pick Malachi Starks. They're not on the board. We consider those guys who have started, guys who are coming back and, played really, really significant roles last year. They're off the board. We are not allowed to pick them, but we're going to go through, and this will be something fun, I think, to revisit once spring ball ends in mid-April. To see what we heard about the guys we picked and, how we're feeling, maybe if we have a little bit of buyer's remorse on some of the names. So to kick us off, I think it's only fitting. I did want to say, too, credit to my good friend Justin Ferguson, who does his own Auburn newsletter, Auburn Observer. They've done this for a few years, and I had listened to their podcast and thought this would be a great idea. And, again, I hope everyone listening enjoys this. So we're going to start with Kipp. You have the full board. You get a chance to pick your guy, and we'll kind of do snake where I'll pick 2 and then vice versa. But Kipp, with the number 1 overall pick, who are you going with, and what are you sort of expecting to see out of this guy this spring?
All right. Well, I know everyone expects this conversation to immediately go to a certain position, but I'm going to go a different direction. Just looking at all the, the potential candidates for spring breakout players, I got to go with a guy that I just got done watching dominate in the last game he played, and that's Bear Alexander, defensive lineman, who in his first year, got to play significant snaps, played in 12 games, had multiple tackles for loss, but he got a couple of those in that national championship game against TCU, playing against, a very experienced offensive line. I believe a redshirt senior center, a couple guys that are probably going to be drafted. And I mean, he had his way with them. Every other snap I saw him getting a push into the backfield, if not making a tackle for a loss, allowing the other players on the team to make plays. And I think if you look at Kirby Smart's defense, the last couple of years, their dominance, it's been up front. We've been talking about the NFL draft. The most talented player in this year's NFL draft is probably Jalen Carter. Last year, number 1 overall pick, and Travon Walker. You had Jordan Davis. Obviously, when those guys were on the field, Georgia's defense played at a different level. If they're going to continue to play at that level, they need that kind of play to carry over. And if you look at the guys coming back, Bear Alexander checks all those boxes of a guy that when he's on the field, he has showed he can be a playmaker. He could be very disruptive, and just his overall strength was very impressive in his first year at a position where you don't typically see guys come in and immediately play the kind of role he did. I mean, Jordan Davis did when he came in, but even guys like Travon Walker and Jalen Carter, they had to kind of get acclimated to college football before they were actually playing the kind of snaps that Bear Alexander played in his first year. I was very impressed with him. And I think that, if he's starting in year 2 or if he's in that 2-man rotation and playing, a lot of snaps, I think he's ready to step up and be a key part of this defense. But I think this spring, he's really got a chance to make a name for himself and show that he can be that next guy in that defensive line that now is for Trey Scott. I mean, he's starting to get a hell of a resume. And I just think that this could be that next guy for Georgia. Really like what Bear Alexander brought to the table last year, and a big recruiting win for Georgia, getting him out of Texas, but also just getting him ready to play SEC football. And I think, a year in the offseason, the strength and conditioning program, the sky is the limit for him and what he might be able to do in this defense.
Nate Dogg commented and said, I think Bear's going to be a monster next year. I think that's a great pick, Kipp. I think, I don't want to share our draft board. We don't like doing that, but Bear was very, very high. But we think there's a lot of talent still out there, and we're going to get the guy, much like a coaching search. We got the guy we wanted. We like what we're going to get. But I want to throw out there his statistics: 12 games, 9 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. A really productive season for Bear Alexander. Saw the comment, someone said something about Michael. I think he's already broken out. I don't think he's a guy. We don't have him on our board just because what he already showed as a freshman. Kind of want to see some more guys that we think can take really significant steps, whether it's talent, playing time, things like that. I think Michael has really already kind of established himself, even understanding that he can get better. So I'm going to have the next 2 picks, and I'm going to go defense, I'm going to go offense. So we'll go one at a time. And defense, going with Jalen Walker. I think that he was very, very impressive. I think that he was a guy, recruited to play inside. They, had the size to move outside. Nolan Smith gets hurt, and they kind of retweak things, and Jalen plays out there. And I thought he played fantastic. And if you're listening to this on earlier Thursday, I posted a story looking at the outside linebackers. And, a lot of the talk's going to be about quarterback, and there's a few other battles that I think we'll hit on during this podcast. But to me, outside linebacker is really interesting. Is a guy like Jalen Walker, a guy that even as a sophomore could wind up starting. I think he's got the talent. I thought he showed flashes throughout the time he got to play, and could be a guy that all of a sudden you turn around and he's starting with, a couple of juniors inside linebacker and Smile Munden and Jamon Dumas-Johnson. But last season, Jalen, 15 games, 9 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, 1 sack. Not incredible numbers, but he was a guy that wasn't starting. And, I thought he played well. Thinking back to his last game against TCU, he made plays in that game. I think really highly of Jalen Walker. I think he's got a chance to have a very productive sophomore year.
Yeah, definitely. And he's unique. He kind of has that Quay Walker to him where, you can play him a little bit inside. He kind of was recruited for a little bit of, both roles. But so far, he's kind of made the most hay just being a guy that can get into the backfield, kind of that edge rusher, and that's definitely an aspect of Georgia's defense that they're still looking for. And the fact that he can provide some help there heading into the spring, big for Georgia. I like that pick. He's a guy that has played a lot of football early on in his career, very talented, and definitely just has everything you look for in a linebacker, and potentially, maybe one of the leaders of this defense. As they look to fill some of the guys that are now going on the NFL. Looking for more leadership. He's definitely the kind of guy in the locker room that can make sure that everyone is playing up to the Georgia standard. So I'll be interested to see what kind of role they have for him this spring. I think there's a lot of versatility in this game, and I think Kirby Smart really puts a high value on that.
Well, we talked about quarterback briefly. You mentioned them. They're all still on the board. Kipp, I got to go out and get my guy under center. I really think that you can't go wrong with any of these options, but I'm going to go with Carson Beck with my second pick. I just think the fact that he is the backup, he was the backup last season. I think the fact that he played well, when he was in the game on the field, 310 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. He was the only one besides Stetson Bennett among the quarterbacks who completed a pass last year. Gunnar Stockton did not see the field. He was more of a scout team guy. And I think Brock Vandagriff might have had 2 attempts, but didn't complete either of those. I do really think that this is going to be an open battle, especially you consider that, while Mike Bobo was there last season, you're kind of starting over in terms of, it's not the same offensive coordinator. And I think that you're going to get all 3 of these scholarship guys are going to get a look, and they're going to get a chance to prove themselves. But I like what Carson brings to the table. He's a little bit, I think, more mobile than people think. He's not Stetson Bennett by any means, but he does have the height that Stetson lacked. So I think that it's going to be a very intriguing battle. But of these 3 quarterbacks coming in the spring, I feel really comfortable picking Carson and seeing what he's able to do.
I like it. I'm glad you went ahead and got a quarterback. Now I can go ahead and wait a little bit, wait a couple rounds to take mine. Yours is already off the board, so that actually kind of plays into what I kind of wanted to do with my draft. So, yeah, I like Carson. He's got a lot of talent. He has waited patiently to kind of showcase that, and he's got outstanding arm talent overall. Just what he brings to the table. I think he may have been the most talented quarterback in the room the last couple of years, just based on what that arm release. It's really quick. He can a lot of RPM on his throws. But as for me, I like to build my team at the line of scrimmage. So, that's kind of the focal point for what we're trying to do here, on Team Kipp. And my next pick is offensive tackle Ernest Green, a guy that I think that, when we saw him out in the spring, everyone was like, this guy's already working with the ones. All the offensive linemen that Georgia's brought in, all the, the 5 stars, top 100 guys, but we had a true freshman out there, that got some reps with the ones, ultimately, made the start with the second team offense at left tackle. We thought, okay, Mark, go ahead and put him down as the second string left tackle going into this first season. Well, injuries kind of prevented him from making the impact that you thought he was going to. And so he didn't even get to the play in a game. And so if we're talking about guys who can, again, have a breakout spring, I think now there's an offensive tackle position that is up for grabs. We don't know if it's going to be left or right. That all boils down to where Stacey Searles and that coaching staff feels most comfortable with. They're going to try a lot of combinations this spring. Obviously, Amarius Mims, played really well at right tackle when he got the chance in the playoffs last year. They could keep him there, knowing that, again, that he played outstanding there against high quality competition. But at the same time, that left tackle position, you want to feel comfortable about someone who's had some experience. You don't typically want to throw in a guy who's never seen live action at left tackle. So again, this spring's going to be really important for that, that left tackle, right tackle battle. But regardless, I like Ernest Green. I think he showed he's got the talent to go in there and earn a starting position. Kirby Smart is not been afraid to put in true freshmen. We saw with Andrew Thomas, guys like Jamari Sawyer, they can play important roles, as they're in their first year, actually seeing action, and which is basically that'll be, what Ernest Green is going into his second season in Athens. But a guy that lost 20, 30 pounds when he needed to be able to compete for snaps early on, already shows the kind of competitive drive you want from offensive lineman. I think, 6'4", 325. You slide him in at left tackle, right tackle, and I think he's going to be able to perform at a high level. And you saw the story that Jordan had the other day with Warren McClendon. He stood out to him. He actually pegged him as the guy that will probably replace him, as one of the offensive tackles. And I know that there's other guys that are going to be in the mix. It's going to be a competitive spring at the offensive tackle position, but I like Ernest Green to step up and be a big time part of this offensive line that basically returns 4 starters from the college football playoff.
I think it's a great pick. He was really high on my list, even before what Warren had said at the combine, just because, like you said, Kipp, going through spring ball last year, we were like, wait, who's 71? It was like, oh, that's one of the freshmen. It was like, oh, it's Ernest Green. And that continued, into G-Day. He was the starting left tackle for the second team offensive line. And it's just, he was a guy that had to deal with some injuries. I think a hamstring early in fall camp, and then he wound up having back surgery that essentially ended his season. But I had talked to him January 7th, right before the national title game. Seemed to be in really good spirits. We had seen him participating in some of those viewing periods we had going back to the Peach Bowl. I really like that pick. I think Ernest Green's got a chance to play a really big role, and we're going to learn, I think, very quickly just what kind of contributions he can make just based on who he's working with once we get into spring ball. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. Kipp, you will have another pick, and it'll go back to me as we continue to go through our spring breakthrough draft. But we'll take a quick break and come right back. Welcome back, everybody. I'm over here writing out notes for future trades, maybe to get a higher pick in the 2024 edition of the spring breakthrough draft. We'll get on the line and see what we can do there. But Kipp, you've got the next pick. You've got off the board a redshirt freshman in Ernest Green and a sophomore in Bear Alexander. What do you want to go with next for your next spring breakthrough pick?
Well, now that I've shored up the line of scrimmage, let's see what we can do at the skill position. I'm going to go defense here. And we just talked about the offensive tackle competition this spring, going to be, one of the highly contested position battles we cover. I think the other one is probably going to be at cornerback. You look at Keely Ringo head into the draft. Who is going to start opposite of Kamari Lassiter? So I'm going to take the guy that I think has already shown he's up for the task, and that's Dalen Everett. I think that, he is a guy that came in and kind of moved ahead of Nyland Green right off the bat, as a freshman. And he just brings a little bit of everything to his game. I think that he's an overall a very solid cornerback, a guy that I think can play off man, can play cover, can press really well. Played in 14 of the 15 games as a freshman, had a pass breakup and about a dozen tackles. I think right now he has learned a lot from Keely Ringo and Kamari Lassiter. I think he's the kind of guy that is only going to get better. Really liked him coming out of high school at IMG Academy. I think that they prepared him well to come in, as they often do, prepared him to come into an SEC program and what they expect out of their players on a day-to-day basis, that consistency. And he got up to speed. I think he is an SEC cornerback through and through. And I think that he's a guy that can come in and really provide solid coverage, going to be tested because now, I mean, Kamari Lassiter's shown he is battle tested as they get. And, it's a secondary that's going to be replacing 2 starters. You're going to be asking a lot of whoever starts opposite corner, but it kind of feels like that's kind of the rotation now. You have someone who's established as a top cover corner. Another guy gets tested, and then he, next year he becomes that guy. And I think that can definitely be Dalen Everett next year for Georgia. And I expect him to really impress this spring against a very, very talented wide receiver core that's as deep as it's ever been at Georgia.
Yeah, one of the battles to watch will be with Dalen Everett, and I would imagine Nyland Green will probably be right in there in the mix, along with some of those younger guys. With Dalen, played in 14 games, 13 tackles, a pass breakup. Gotta say, just showing all the cards here, I had Dalen, was thinking about him in that first round. I guess actually would have been my second pick, but I said, look, we got to get a quarterback. We got to get a someone that we trust, and that's what we did, and we don't regret it. We wish Dalen well, and we're going to be following what he's able to do. So I've got 2 picks, and I'm really going back and forth on what exactly I want to do here. And I think my first of these 2 picks is going to be with a guy that is at a position that I think is going to be looked at quite a bit and scrutinized just compared to what it was able to do last year. I'm going with Oscar Delp. I think that, we saw so many 2 tight end sets. I think that we saw so much action with Brock and Darnell starting last year. And, the question is how much, if any, of that sort of 2 tight end sets are we going to see? Are they going to stick with some of these, 3 receiver sets because of the talent they brought in, which they very well could. But, was really impressed with what we saw from Oscar Delp in his first year. He gets his first career touchdown in week 3 against South Carolina, who I don't think coincidentally that was the team that wound up runner up for his services. I believe his mother might have went to South Carolina, so there were ties there. But I think that Oscar's got a chance to be really talented and have a really productive sophomore year. He was called to play in that Peach Bowl when Darnell got hurt, and I think it was a situation where when you look at that, that's a big moment for a guy that's pretty much a year removed from high school, but he played well. And again, we'll see how much we see him out there on the field with Brock Bowers at the same time, but I think Oscar's got a chance to be really, really talented and play an important role in his second year as a Bulldog.
That was the next guy on my board. I went back and forth between him and Dalen Everett. Just figured I'd go 1-on-1 offense and defense. I love that pick. He, when he had to step up when Darnell got hurt, he looked outstanding out there. He obviously, no one is going to block the way Darnell Washington can at the tight end position. Todd Hartley said it in the build up to I believe the SEC championship game, or it may have been the Peach Bowl. He's not going to have another Darnell Washington because there aren't any. That is the true unicorn at the position. But what Oscar Delp does bring you is a guy that's got high effort, went out there and did his best as a blocker, but obviously going to bring a receiving aspect to the position that Georgia's already shown they love to utilize. So, they are going to be looking for other targets out there and weapons to spread the ball around. And I think he's going to provide them an option that can make some damage after the catch and stretch the field a little bit more, which is something that Georgia desperately needs.
So Kipp took what I consider the top offensive lineman among the players that we consider eligible for the breakthrough candidates. So I'm going to take one with my next pick, and I'm going with Micah Morris. I think that he's a guy that, playing inside or could even potentially kick outside if needed. He is going to be a sophomore after being a redshirt freshman last year. Played in 7 games. I just really like what he brings to the table. There's a number of these offensive linemen that I think could really get in the mix. Some of them more veteran, and I'm a little more hesitant to try to grab like a junior or a senior, although did do that with Carson Beck. I really like Micah's upside. I think with another year of working with Stacey Searles, a guy that obviously understands this position well, I think Micah Morris could be a guy that we talk about quite a bit by the time spring ball's over.
Yeah, and you talk about the different, trying to get the best 5 on the field. There's always a chance that Xavier Truss gets a look outside, at right tackle. And then at that point, there's another position up for grabs. But then also we saw last year, I mean, Georgia was rotating its left guard. So at the same time, while Xavier Truss played a large amount of the snaps, Micah Morris could be that guy this year that comes in and pushes him for snaps at left guard. So I think, my pick of Ernest Green's kind of just a projection based on what we were able to see of him. But in year two, guys make moves. And I think Mike is definitely a guy that could be one of the, right there in line with an Ernest Green to make a move. And if not start, push these guys for snaps and definitely be in the two deep, getting a lot of, significant playing time.
So what we'll do, we will ultimately pick 6 players apiece. So Kipp, you will pick 2 more in a row right here. I will pick 1, and then we'll kind of alternate with the last 2. So you've got 2 picks in a row right here.
All right, let's do it. Well, I'm going to go defense with my first pick. I like this guy to make a big splash. He is a true freshman. Jonell Aguero. I think that he's a guy that we just saw last year with Malachi Starks, that you can come in as a true freshman and play a significant role in the secondary, if you're talented enough. I think Jonell is one of those guys. He is one of the most talented safeties to come out in the last couple of classes. I know that, obviously Dan Jackson coming off an injury, but a guy that, played a lot of football in the last couple of years for Georgia, and David Daniels kind of been that number 2 safety there behind Chris Smith, who's now going on, on to the NFL, but that position is up for grabs. And I think that, Jonell has a outstanding chance to get a lot of playing time. I'll be interested to see kind of what they do, at the safety position, because they have a lot of options there, and there are a lot of different ways they can go. Tyke Smith could be a guy that gets moved back there as well, but I just think that Jonell is a guy that they will not be able to keep off the field. I just think he is extremely athletic. He has SEC size right now at safety. Is definitely not afraid to lower the shoulder, which I know that David Daniel is, prone to do as well. It's going to be about him knowing, what you can do in college football as far as tackling and what's going to get penalized. I think that's kind of a key for both those guys, because if you just watch, Aguero's film, he's a heat-seeking missile out there, but he's really athletic, and I think that he is a guy that in year one can come in and play a pivotal role, if not start being the 2 deep, and potentially, those first couple of games, he could go out there and prove that he is capable of starting in SEC football in his first year. So I just like overall his talent level. I think this spring, he is going to have an opportunity to really showcase what he can do for Georgia football.
Really like that pick. A very highly touted recruit coming in, and again, a great example of Malachi Starks. But with any of these defensive backs getting to work with Kirby, getting to work with Will Muschamp, getting to work with Fran Brown, I think that only helps them get acclimated. I'm sure there will probably be a few times where we hear him called out, but guess what? That's what happened with Malachi last year. That went into fall camp that we were hearing Malachi. But they're going to learn. But I really like that pick. I think that by the end of this, when you look at this, especially the draft value you got there, Kipp, where you got him, I think that one could really pay off.
Man, that's what we're all about over here at Team Kipp, and our front office. I got to really tip my cap to the scouts, the guys that built our board. Spent a lot of time doing it in the last 90 seconds, and I just really appreciate all their hard work. And with that, I'm going to make my next pick, and you know what? I'm actually going to stay on defense. Again, going for positional value. Saw your pick earlier. I'm staying at a similar position outside linebacker, and I'm taking Darius Smith. I think that he is a guy that, gosh, when he's on the field, you see the athleticism. I mean, a guy that's 6'6", 225 pounds. Everyone saw the photo of him, almost blocking the kick against Ohio State. If you don't see that and either see flashbacks of, depending on your age, Boss Bailey, or just Leonard Floyd, the similar athleticism. And I think Georgia kind of used Darius Smith a little, similarly to Leonard Floyd, in the fact that he got some snaps at the star position last year. And you just talk about sometimes, they use that as kind of their jack of all trades. We want to give different looks. The star position does not necessarily mean, you're that extra defensive back out there. You're a guy that, could be an extra pass rusher, could be a guy covering tight ends or running backs, or it could be a guy that rushes, rushes the passer when they need help doing that. It's just he has that athleticism. And I think, again, some other guys we talked about on the show probably would have played bigger roles if they didn't get hurt. I think Darius Smith's one of those guys when that concussion kind of knocked him out of the mix there, literally. And he is set up, if he is able to, the key this spring, and maybe add a little bit more weight. Can he play at 235? Can he get up to that? What gains has he gotten in the strength and conditioning program? I think he's on target, and so far the returns from the winter workouts have been impressive for him. And he is a guy that is just one of those guys where I don't think we've, even tapped into his potential. And we already know Nolan Smith, Robert Beal off to NFL after tearing up the combine. He is one of those guys that, as far as his athleticism, I mean, the sky is the limit for what he could do in this defense. It's a crowded position with some incoming freshmen. You also got, like Chaz Chambliss in there as well. I think, it might be a specialized role for Darius Smith, but I think it could be a key one. And I think this spring, if we're talking about breakout performances, trying in, new guys or guys who haven't played a lot of snaps at offensive tackle, Darius Smith could probably have a field day.
Yeah, I think Darius is a great pick, and it almost looks Photoshop, the picture of him up in the air in the Peach Bowl. And I asked him before the national championship game, do you think you would have blocked that if it was kicked straight on? And he was just like, oh yeah. Like he had no doubt he would have got a hand on it. And yeah, I think he's a freak athlete, and the fact they're willing to move him around sort of lets you know that they think really highly of him, and they're going to find a way to get him on the field. All right, so 3 picks left, and we're going to alternate. I'll pick, you'll pick, and then I'll have the last pick. And just to run down, yeah, you get Mr. Irrelevant. Or no, do I get Mr. Irrelevant?
You flipped it, yeah.
Yeah, I get Mr. Irrelevant. But just so everybody listening, I'll go through who we picked so far with 3 picks left. So Team Kipp is defensive tackle Bear Alexander, offensive lineman Ernest Green, cornerback Dalen Everett, safety Jonell Aguero, and outside linebacker Darius Smith. So Team Jordan is, outside linebacker Jalen Walker, quarterback Carson Beck, tight end Oscar Delp, offensive lineman Micah Morris. So with 3 picks left, I'm up, and I'm going to get a guy who we heard about right after the national championship game. And it's one of those rare situations where you have a coach willing to talk about a guy who's not been on campus very long. I'm going with inside linebacker CJ Allen. I thought that Kirby talking about the job CJ Allen did on scout team, getting ready, giving them the looks for TCU. I mean, I think that speaks volumes about CJ and what he's bringing to the table. And, something that I thought was really fun that I was able to do last season was track the stats week to week, the high school stats of some of the guys that were committed to Georgia, some of the targets. And I swear to you, Kipp, every single week I was looking at CJ Allen's like, oh my God. I mean, it was like he'd run for 180 yards and 3 touchdowns and have like 12 tackles and 2 sacks. I mean, it was like every week. And, you got to keep the competition in mind, and you got to keep, who they're playing and what they're up against. But I was thoroughly impressed with CJ. I really don't think you could go wrong with any of the 3 inside linebackers. Only 2 that they signed in this past class. Only 2 are already here. Troy Boyles will come in the summer. But I'm going with CJ Allen. I just think he's off to a great start. The fact, again, that a head coach is willing to credit a guy that, had only been on campus at that point for a few weeks with doing an excellent job and getting them ready for what wound up being a blowout victory in a national title game.
I like it. It's a good pick, and I think standing there and hearing Kirby mention him. I mean, that was the one thing that night that struck with me the most. And I just remember like mentioned it to you multiple times. I just could not believe Kirby Smart brought him up, and I put a lot of value in the guys that impress on the scout team for Georgia, because when you're not starting, you're in a backup role, you might not see a lot of snaps, but when you're on that scout team, you're going against the ones. That's what you are doing. Your job is to push the starters, and I think that's a very valuable role at a place like Georgia, where their starters might be the most talented players you go up against all season. And we've established that Georgia's practices are, their goal is to make them harder than the games. And I think they've been able to accomplish that the last couple of years. And for a guy just to step right in, and play that role of an established TCU starting linebacker, and for Kirby Smart to think he did it better than they did it on film, it speaks volumes of what CJ Allen, the preparation, the way that he prepared himself to come in as an early enrollee, skip all America stuff, not worried about second semester senior year. I want to go and be a scout team player, for a team competing for a national championship. It just tells you all you need to know about CJ Allen. And I mentioned earlier just about the leadership that, a guy like Jalen Walker might have in that room. I don't think you're going to find a guy who exemplifies leadership as a true freshman like CJ Allen will for this team. We don't know how long Glenn Schumann will be at Georgia. He's going to wait until he finds the right job, but his position room is ridiculous. It's off the charts right now. There are guys that are, they're there that are established starters, but the freshmen coming in are just incredible prospects. And when you have a guy like Tresman Marshall leave and go to Alabama so he can start there, because he's might not see the field, he might see his role diminished with these freshmen, just tells you all about what Glenn Schumann has built in his position room at Georgia. And I think CJ Allen has a chance to be one of the best.
I appreciate you supporting that pick so thoroughly. I figured that honestly he might be off the board by the time I got to that pick, but no doubt that I think very highly of what CJ is bringing to the table. Kipp, we are in the final round of this draft, so you get the first pick of the final round. Where are you going with it?
All right. Well, I waited until the very end, but I'm not gonna take the easy way out and not pick a quarterback. So here I am. I'm going back to offense. That's why I went double defense last round. I knew that I could wait until the final pick to take my quarterback. I'm going to go with the quarterback who has the most experience with Mike Bobo and the Bobo family, and Gunnar Stockton, a guy that, again, originally committed to play for Mike Bobo at South Carolina. Mike Bobo's father has a long history with Gunnar Stockton and his family at Raven County. Basically is the person who showed that Gunnar should be a quarterback. This kid can throw at age like 7 or 8. So I think, that experience, he knows exactly what Mike Bobo is looking for. And honestly, if you just look at what, if Georgia's going to run a similar offense to what Todd Monken ran last year, and I think they're going to, Gunnar Stockton is the quarterback best built for that role. You just look at Stetson Bennett, 5'11", 192 pounds at the combine. You want a guy that's, that can run a little bit, that's stocky, can take the hits. Well, Gunnar Stockton is 6'1" or 6'1.5", 210 pounds. He is built for that type of role. And I just think that, again, Gunnar Stockton's familiarity with what Mike Bobo wants, Mike Bobo's familiarity with Gunnar Stockton and what he brings to the table, and Gunnar going into year 2. The college football kind of slowing down, able to make reads and progressions faster. I think he's the guy that's really going to shine in the spring and maybe make this quarterback competition a little interesting. I'm not saying that, Gunnar Stockton's going to win the starting position. I think this is probably a quarterback battle that's going to go into the fall. But I think Gunnar Stockton's going to stretch that battle more than what people expect. And I think that that's exactly what you want. Maybe Carson Beck's still the starter and wins the starting job, but I think Gunner's the kind of guy that can push him and can definitely put some heat on him this spring. I think that he's a guy that, his overall athleticism is going to really shine in spring football, especially in G-Day. I think that's just kind of the format where you can't tackle these guys really. So I think Gunner's going to be able to stretch out some plays and make some big time throws. And he's a really talented quarterback, and I like his future at Georgia.
I think it's a really good pick, and I got to admit, when I picked Carson, I was kind of going back and forth between Carson and Gunner, and that we're going to be writing about it pretty much daily as we watch all three, along with Brock Vandegrift, as they compete for that starting role. Last pick, Mr. Irrelevant. I'm going to kind of go with the thought process I had with C.J. Allen, sort of tracking them through high school football, seeing what they did. With the three freshman wide receivers coming in, I really think you could have gone with any of the three. I'm going to go with Yazeed Haynes. I thought that he was really talented. I thought that Georgia, sort of like me picking him at Mr. Irrelevant, I think Georgia kind of got in there before everybody really knew what Haynes brought to the table. 6'1", 170. I think he's a guy that can make plays. He did it throughout his high school career and ended it on a really high note at North Penn. I think any of these three wide receivers that just came in are going to be really worth watching. And keeping in mind, all three were there for bowl practices. So they sort of got a head start, got a chance to kind of give the opposing team, when they were running on scout team, different looks. I really like any of those three wide receivers, but I'm going with Yazeed Haynes to see what he's able to do this spring.
That was the next guy on my board as well. I think that, they had him in the workout, and then they had him work out again just because I guess maybe he surprised them. And they're like, well, this guy is a lot more athletic than what we thought. And then they got him in the fall, and he came in for the workouts. And Brian McClendon told me whenever I talked to him and the build up for the national championship during the media session, we got a steal. And it confirmed everything they kind of thought. And you kind of get a little stress. You get these guys signed, and everyone's all excited. All the fans are already thinking about 2024 next year's. But for college coaches, you're like, did we sign who we thought we signed? And then you get those guys in early, and sometimes you're like, wait a second. This guy isn't who we thought he was, but not in a good way. But Yazeed Haynes is who they thought he was, and they're excited about his future at Georgia. They think they got a steal, and I think they got a guy that's very explosive, has good size as well, and I think he is going to be a prolific pass catcher at Georgia over the next 3 years.
So that wraps it up, but let's look at each of our teams, and I'll read yours off, Kipp. You had the first overall pick. You got Bear Alexander, followed by Ernest Green, Dalen Everett, Jonell Aguero, Darius Smith, and Gunnar Stockton. What do you make of what you got? Anybody that you wish you could have snuck in there? How are you feeling about Team Kipp?
It's crazy that I'm going to have 6 guys that all break out this spring.
Just bullseye on every one of them.
I don't. Yeah, you look at the NFL draft, and it's more misses than hits, especially for us Falcons fans. We're just hoping to get 1 or 2 picks right. Could you imagine a Falcons draft where all 6 picks hit? It would be an incredible sight to see. I think we would probably need a year or 2 before we actually believed it. But with these guys, yeah, I feel pretty confident. These guys are set up for a big spring, and they've already impressed. The ones that have already, had a year at Georgia have already showcased their talent and established that, they can play in the SEC. So I like, big roles for them. I will admit I had 1 guy left on my board just in case I needed him, and it would have been off script. It would have been place kicker Jared Zirkle. Just because, Peyton Woodring's not going to be here until the summer, spring football. Somebody's got to make some kicks, and I think he made a 21-yarder. Was it Vanderbilt? He made his 1 field goal attempt, and he's had 3 or 4 kickoffs as well. There's a guy set up for a bigger role this spring, and it's Jared Zirkle. I know he's got some walk-ons he'll be competing with, but I think the time is now for him if he's going to earn that starting position. it's this spring where he's going to shine. So if you're listening to Rusty, I did mention a kicker in the show. That would have been your first pick. We all know that, Rusty loves him some specialists. So, in his honor, that would have been my mythical 7th pick. It would have been Rusty's first pick. But hey, we all have different draft boards. I really like how mine fell.
Yeah, I think you have a very solid team. So running through my team one more time, I had Jalen Walker, Carson Beck, Oscar Delp, Micah Morris, C.J. Allen, Yazid Haynes. Really like my team. I do kind of wish I'd have maybe gotten a defensive lineman. I thought about Jordan Hall. I thought he could have been a guy. But I do think if I had that 7th pick, I was probably going to go get Andrew Paul because he was a guy that before he got hurt during fall camp, he was getting some pretty good buzz. Tears his ACL, has been on the path to recovery since then. And based on what he was telling reporters before the Peach Bowl, he's going to be able to go in spring. But on the whole, I really like the team I got, and I think that we're going to be really productive. And gonna just you're going to see me at these interviews and be like, Jordan keeps asking about 6 guys. Why does he keep asking? He's asked 5 questions about Micah Morris this spring. Is that really necessary?
Hey man, whatever you got to do, push the narrative out there, speak it into action. I like your team as well. I think it just kind of goes to show that Georgia is a young and talented team. And they were kind of young last year, which is kind of scary for other teams. But all these names are guys that are probably going to play really key roles for Georgia this year. Extremely talented. So when you're watching, the NFL draft and Georgia has 10, 11 guys drafted, just remember they had 15 the year before. You looked as good as they did, during their first championship season, and I think it might be even better this year.
No doubt about it. So we will get out of here in 1 second. I'll make sure to. I'll put up a Twitter poll with these 2 teams, and we'll get people to vote who they think had between us who had the better team for the breakouts for this spring. But quick Georgia men's basketball minute. They played in the SEC championship, SEC tournament on Wednesday night as an 11th seed and lost to 14th seed LSU 72-67. Georgia's season ends. They have the longest active losing streak among SEC teams. Just a really disappointing end to Mike White's first season. They end the season 16-16. No way to really kind of wax poetic or be positive when you lose to the team that was seeded last in the SEC. All I can really say is we're going to keep our nose to the ground when it comes to the program. I think there's going to be a lot of action with the transfer portal, both people coming in and people leaving in the next few days and weeks, and we'll be all over that. Kipp, I know you stayed up, and I barely did. I think as soon as I hit publish on that story, I was out, but very disappointing end to what, on the whole, was still a pretty productive first year for Mike White.
I did not expect, Georgia's team, their effort level, to go the opposite direction of where the Hawks have been the last couple of days. That's not a great sign, but this offseason is a pivotal one for him. He expecting a lot of guys leaving, and he's going to have to hit that transfer portal just as hard, if not harder, than he did last year. And so obviously you'll be covering that, and I'll be watching from afar. But I think overall, this is exactly kind of what you thought how the season was going to go. You just wished it kind of ended on a more positive note. You wanted those wins to kind of come toward the end than earlier in the year, just for momentum purposes. But overall, this is what you expected. So you can't be disappointed. You're disappointed. You've been whelmed by this first season under Mike White, but it's still a huge improvement from what you saw last year. So let's see if he can make those same strides in year 2, because that gets you into a tournament. I don't know which one, but if he makes the same improvements next year, Georgia's going to be a team that is tough to handle in the SEC.
Being whelmed, spoken like a true Atlanta Falcons fan, Kipp. Well, we're going to get out of here on that. I appreciate everybody who listened live, everyone who's checking this out after the fact. Again, be on the lookout. I think on Friday I'll tweet out a poll where you guys can vote for Team Kipp or Team Jordan based on who we drafted. And we'll keep a note on how those guys perform in spring and everybody else as we follow spring ball. Another reminder, on Monday, we will have a live podcast where we will answer your questions as we get ready for spring ball. And then on Tuesday, it's going to be all out as we watch Georgia open spring practice and follow along with the news from that. So we'll get out of here. Again, thanks to Kipp for taking some time. Appreciate everybody who watched this live. Until next time, take care.